Supply and demand, example 1. Suppose that for a certain product, supply can be modeled by Q equals 1200p, and demand is modeled by Q equals 100,000 minus 800p. A. At a price of $100, what quantity are consumers willing to buy and what quantity are producers willing to supply? Will the market push the prices up or down? So if we're talking about consumers, like we're asked to in the first part of this, we need to look at demand. So here, if we plug in a price of 100, we get 100,000 minus 800 times 100. So that's going to give us 20,000. So that's our demand. I'm going to put a D here, so remember that that's demand. Now, if we want to know how many of this item suppliers are willing to supply, we need to go to the supply function, which was up here. And we have Q equals 1200 times our price, which is going to give us 120,000. So that's quite a difference between the supply and the demand. So one thing I want to note here is that sometimes you are given the supply and demand functions in terms of Q, and sometimes you're given the supply and demand functions in terms of P. So just be careful that you understand what number you have and where you need to plug it in. The second part of this question says, will the market push the prices up or down? So since supply is greater than demand, that's going to flood the market, and consumers have the upper hand here because they can get it anywhere, and therefore it will push the price down. So the market here is going to push the price down from $100. Part B, find the equilibrium price and quantity. So the equilibrium is when supply equals demand. Since these are both in the form Q equals, we will first solve for P by setting these equal to each other. So we have 1200p equals 100,000 minus 800p. We're going to add the 800p over here, and we'll get 2000p equals 100,000. Divide both sides by 2,000 to give us 50. So our price here, our equilibrium price, is $50. In order to get our equilibrium quantity, we need to take that P and plug it back into either one of our functions. It doesn't matter because that's the point they intersect. So the Q will be the same no matter which one you plug it into. So if we do 1200 times P, that's going to give us 60,000. So I plugged it in here. Okay, so at equilibrium, the price of our product is $50, and manufacturers are making and selling 60,000 of this product, and consumers are demanding 60,000 of this product, and they're all relatively happy with this price point of $50. So that's our equilibrium point. Let's look at another example. Example 2. One of the tables below represents supply and the other represents demand. Use these tables to answer the following questions. Part A, which table represents which curve and why? So in trying to figure out supply and demand, remember that for supply, as quantity increases, the price goes up. So for both of these tables, the quantity is increasing across the bottom. So we're looking for the table where the price is going up, which is happening on the second table, supply. And for demand, as our quantity goes up, the price should be going down. So that's represented here in the first table. So our second table is supply and our first table is demand. Part B. At a price of $155, approximately how many items would consumers purchase? Since we're talking about consumers, we're looking at our demand table, and we're thinking about where 155 would be. So we know that our answer should be somewhere between 10 and 15 because 155 falls between 167 and 153. We can use the slope of the line between these 2 points to get a better approximation. So if we subtract 167 minus 153, we see that the price spans $14, whereas the quantity spans 5. So if we look at that ratio, 14 over 5, we get 2.8, which means that for every 1 unit we change in quantity, our price will change by $2.8. Since we're trying to get close to 155, why don't we think about it starting at this point? If we subtract 1 unit from 15 to go to 14, we expect our price to increase by 2.8. So 153 plus 2.8 gives us 155.8. That's about as close as we're going to get with our quantity staying a whole number. So that means that we're going to have a quantity of approximately 14, because then again our price will be 155.8, which is as close as we're going to get it while having a whole quantity. Part C, at a price of 155, approximately how many items would the manufacturer supply? So we're going to apply the same sort of analysis here. 155 is going to be between these two, so we're expecting our answer to be between 20 and 25. So again, if we look at the span of price, we go from 110 to 166, which is a span of 56 over 5 units, which means for every increment of 1 unit of quantity, the price is going to change by approximately $11.20. So we're trying to get close to a price of 55. So let's start here, which is closer to 155 because we're at 166. If we were to move 1 unit to the left, which would be a quantity of 24, we expect the price to decrease by $11.2, which is pretty close to 155. It's 154.8. So this is going to be a quantity of approximately 24. In these types of examples, we want to keep the quantity a whole number and we're approximating. It's not perfect, but it's a pretty good estimation. Part D. Will the market push prices higher or lower than $155? So notice here that when we're at $155, that supply is greater than demand. Whenever supply is greater than demand, that's going to push the market down. So that's going to push the market to be lower than $155. Part E. What would the price have to be if you wanted consumers to buy at least 20 items? So again, consumers, we're going to go back to demand. And if we want them to buy at least 20 items, we are now talking about what's happening in this column. And so we can see the associated price is going to be $143. So in order for the consumers to buy at least 20 items, we need the price to be $143 or less. As the price goes down, the more that they're willing to buy goes up. Part F. What would the price have to be if you wanted to manufacture to supply at least 20 items? So again, we're going to the 20, which is going to happen right about here. And we look at what's going on with the price there, and we see that the price has to be set at least $110 or more in order for them to supply at least 20 items. So they want it to be set at $110 or more.